Yeah, and that's another problem with this technology. In the last chapter of my book, I go through a lot of the current laws and how they have to be rewritten, because the very idea of intellectual property is now defunct. If you can steal someone's property, although I think they were probably, in the term of mental rape, thinking of more severe actions. I mean, literally, there is one simulated rape from an interview of a woman that I did, and so you can cause the same mental harm, trauma to the psyche in a simulated fashion as you can in a physical fashion.
Okay, folks out there.
And we are seeing that, Zeph. I have heard from a lot of victims, female victims, that do get what they call a simulated rape, or, basically, their genitals made to tingle or hurt while they're being hit with, sexual assault images at the same time. That's a pretty common complaint among female victims.
Yeah, we used to be called, incubus, succubus type of demonic activity. Now it's become electronic. In other words, this all that sort of the stuff we would call spiritual warfare has really gone high tech. And it's really, it really is horrifying. But this idea of mental rape is on the rise. Does that mean then that there are necessarily military ops behind the scenes? Could there be rapists in charge of this technology, or having access to it then, just like common criminals? Can they operate these satellites?
You have to define criminal. I think many segments of our government operates as criminals and above the law. No, under the George Bush administration, John Yoo wrote up his torture memos, and it included rape and other things in there that, as long as we as a country do it without taking pleasure in it, then it's not considered part of torture. So my guess is that they're getting around the law that way. And no, I don't think the common, criminal has access to this. I think they're quite trained.
Okay, because see, there's a little debate on that, because there's been some information out there that the criminal groups have been able to access somehow through their computers by getting hacked codes or whatever, these satellites, and using them for their own nefarious activities. But you're saying that's probably unlikely.
It's unlikely. The CIA has hired the mafia in the past to try to kill Castro. They're very much utilize each other's networks. But I don't see what the common criminal has to gain by wasting their time torturing, random people, basically. John, what's your take on it?
Well, my take on it is kind of like what you said. I mean, it depends on how you define criminal. And one of the things that worries me in society right now is we're at a point now where we have more people in the private sector with top secret clearances. That most of our intelligence services are being farmed out now, being contracted out to private companies. These are people that got their training in one government agency or another, still maintaining their clearance, but working for private intelligence gathering companies. One of them is based here out of San Antonio called Mantech, and it's well known that they did purchase Igor Smirnov's technology through a third-party company, and they're based right here. So it's a real fine line between what you call legitimate experimentation or experimentation by the government and criminals accessing it, because these people are still criminals, but they're criminals that have a top-secret clearance. So that end of it, I can see where you could say, yes, it has gotten into criminal hands, but these are criminals that were government trained and still have clearances.
Yeah, a guy like Adolf Hitler today, where he used to hire Tibetan remote viewers to go in and try to get information on the enemy or invade and try to kill them remotely. Just think how much fun he'd be having with all this if he were around today. I mean, it's just my feeling is we're at the beginning, not toward the end. What do you think? To me, it seems like this is just gearing up more and more. I mean, I started dealing with this subject, the technology of it, a few years ago, and over all of those years, every year thereafter, it increased. And are we still increasing? And how do you see the future of psychotronics?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a technology that's not going away. Look, one of the whole points of writing the book that I did, and I have another one coming out that gets into the physics and details of the sciences of mind control and cybernetics. This is a technology that's going to be more disruptive to the human race and culture than the internet, airplanes, or cars combined. It's not going away. It's actually a species changer, so unfortunately, this is our future, and the whole point is to get it out of the wrong hands. Right now, we always use technology for warfare and spying and advantage first. Then the technology can be used for good, and there are many medical purposes for the technology. Technology is neutral, and it's just right now it's being used in such an evil way that we are really afraid of the technology. But there can always be controls over it, like nuclear weapons. It can be regulated. But it's not going away.
Every year it's increased, but now every year I have more and more, I'm in contact with more and more TIs, targeted individuals. And just after, John, after we did our last interview, I met some more that were coming forth. And then I became aware that there are networks out there of TIs, of survivors. And like you said, from every walk of life, basically old, young, age doesn't seem to matter either. Okay, if someone finds out or thinks that they're a targeted individual, what should they do? And what's the first step?
Well, they should contact one of the organizations out there. Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance. Join some support groups. Get some information before they act, because they're going to go down the same pathway of trickery that almost every TI goes through. They go to their local police. Well, the police, they don't know anything about it. They're not going to do anything. They'll go to the FBI. They'll get the same response. And so they need to know what works and what doesn't, so they don't fall for the common traps. That's my advice.
Okay, John.
I would give the same advice, Zeph, because one thing, Dr. Duncan and I both have spoke to multiple victims, and there's a certain set of programs that they use with each individual, and each individual goes down the same destructive, self-destructive pathways when they're exposed to these. And one of the first is that it's coming from the neighbors. So you do something crazy to your neighbors and get arrested and diagnosed, and then once you're further victimized by the psychiatric community, then you're really heading downhill. And then the second one is that there's got to be a chip in me, and I get emails from people every day that the only way this could be happening to me is if I'm chipped. That's actually another falsehood. Are we finding chips in people? Sure we are. Is it a necessity? Absolutely not.
Okay, so that brings new light to the whole abduction phenomenon, because it seems to me these two things are related. What are your thoughts on that? We'll start with you, Dr. Duncan. What do you think?
There's no doubt that the government started using cover stories, alien cover stories. Many years ago, they found them to be effective. And so these abductions that have been reported even early in the 60s are most definitely related to this government experimentation program. And they've found a way to automate it and literally ramp it up. And I think that's one reason why we're seeing more TIs. It could be also that more TIs have access to the internet, and that's helping people get together and share notes. But it does look like it's being ramped up.
Yeah, and to me it looks like it's going more toward a societal or a large span of people, crowd control, the thought control of a nation type of thing. I mean, that's right. It's not going to just be controlling this one and that one individually. It almost seems like it's got to go nationwide or even worldwide.
This is more effective than normal propaganda. You can affect people while they're sleeping and working. They don't even need to shut off their televisions to get programming. So every country in the world, of course, their goal is to shepherd their people into one conformed thinking pattern. You can look at maybe terrorism as being a milestone to get people to maybe give up the rights, freedom of thought. We got to read everyone's brain print just to make sure they're not a terrorist. So I think it's definitely heading that direction.
Yeah. Once it gets out of the the sort of beta testing stage, it's going mainstream. It's the pre-crime, that whole Steven Spielberg movie. What was that called, Trish? It wasn't called pre-crime.
Minority Report.
Right, Minority Report. Okay. To me, and then they were using psychics. Well, just replace those psychics with high technology.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And then that's the same movie, and I think some of these movies are kind of prophetic in a way as to, just making predictions of where, especially science fiction. And it looks like this is one pathway they're following. But in the end of that movie, we might recall that, the technology was deemed evil. Ultimately, it didn't help society. And when they destroyed that whole place and they destroyed the Department of Pre-Crime, that was the solution. In other words, the good guys won then. But that, as you say, that's not going to be the solution here, because this technology is not going to go away like in that movie. It's going to increase.
There's no way this is going away. The investments, once you understand the how large of a sample set, how much human suffering they've allowed to put into this, developing it, the number of dollars, there's no way they're going to give this up. And this is here to stay. And the people in control that are, I'm sure, so seduced by its power that they rather see the human race go away before this does.
Well, as the big new Brzezinski said, it's easier to kill 1 million people than control them. I guess when he said that, he wasn't taking all this into account.
And you know what? And there is good. This technology is not entirely bad. I mean, looking at things from a medical point of view,
right?
The ability to maybe help with addiction, help with some medical problems with it. Look at the Terry Schiavo case. To determine whether that woman had conscious thought or not. The doctors were having to look at EEG readings that harken back to the 1950s. A bunch of intelligible squiggly lines on paper that really are just about unreadable. They could have put this system on her and knew if she had conscious thought within minutes. I mean, so there is some good things that can come out of this technology. Just as Dr. Duncan said, it's not being used in that manner.
Okay.